I want to start with a disclaimer because I want you to understand that I don't come to this topic because I'm bitter about it. My experience has been a very positive one with the churches that have been involved with us, the years we've done mission work, even through my parents. If they had challenges with their supporting congregations, they never told us. And so I just have a positive perspective of it and very excited about it. I'm very thankful for the churches that have been involved with us over the years. We love the churches for helping us, and the work in Brazil is because churches here have had the vision and the foresight and just have been dedicated to send people over. And so, I want you to know that I come from this from a very positive perspective. But when I got assigned to this, I did talk to several different missionaries to different degrees that are on the field. Just recently came back some guys that have been missionaries for a very long time, and so I talked to all kinds of different people and to different degrees of mission work because I wanted to kind of get a somewhat comprehensive idea, and that's what I'm going to try to present to you today. In Romans 10:14 and 15, a very well thought out verse as Paul is following here, an idea, logic to make the point, and we've used this for missions all the time because it's a verse that just emphasizes that well. Paul says, "How then can they call on the one they have not believed in? And how can they believe in the one of whom they have not heard? And how can they hear without someone preaching to them? And how can they preach unless they are sent?" And I think it's important to notice that mission work is really a partnership. There's all kinds of elements and different people doing different things. It takes unity. It takes effort. It takes a collective effort to do mission well. And some go, some send, and there's everything in between. And I just wanted to start with that. And I don't want to spend, even though we could, and it would be a time well spent talking about the theology behind missions and all that. I was asked to do something very practical and very specific about just some of the things us missionaries want you to know. But I wanted to start with that, and I just encourage you, and I have seen this firsthand, if you're a congregation that is mission-focused, even if it's mission-focused overseas, inevitably you will be a congregation that grows. It just is just something about a mindset that leads you to want to be involved in missions that will also kind of have its effect on you locally. So I just encourage you to think of it in that sense as well. But let's go into some specifics. And anytime you got a question or comment, just please let me know. There are different types of missions and I guess missionaries. And I don't mean to say that one is more important than the other. But there are missionaries in the sense of some short-term mission work. And there's, I think, been a great increase in that in recent years. And I think that's great. And there's missionaries in the sense of a long-term mission effort. And I'm for both. I think both of them have their reasons and their effects and their benefits. But being on the receiving end of many campaigns when I was growing up, and actually going on several campaigns when I was at OC, let me tell you that mostly campaigns are for the benefit of those that go. And I think that's good. There's plenty of missionaries who became missionaries because they went on campaigns. There are good things that happen also for those that receive it, but the greatest benefit is for those that go, for the church, that the members that go and do campaigns. When they come back excited and motivated, and that's great. But I just hope that as you think of mission work, as you do short-term things, that does not replace your willingness to be involved with long-term missions. I don't think one should replace the other. I think they should complement each other. There's a growing practice for in American congregations to support national missionaries or people of that particular country. And I especially think that's a great thing. I guess that's true of me in a sense. I'm, like I said, originally from Brazil. But as my brother has I guess, broken it to me that I'm probably just as American as Brazilian since I've been back and forth so many times. So that might not truly apply, but if you are of the mindset of helping locals, nationals, that's great. There's all kinds of benefits to that, but there's a few challenges, and if you're thinking of getting into that, or you are into that and you want to talk to me about it some more, there's a lot more things that could be said. But one thing that I think should be noted is that you should, I guess, act according to local labor laws and practices. You're supporting a national. You're not doing it the way you shouldn't do it the way it's done here. Like in Brazil, for example, you get paid, 12 months of the year, and at the last month in December, you actually get a 13th salary. That's just, I guess, that's our really summertime, and I guess that's to help with vacation. There you get a month off vacation a year, and you get paid not only the salary of that month, you also get paid a third more, I guess, to spend on vacation. And so there's all kinds of other things, and each country has its own. In Brazil, if you are going to let somebody go, you have to give them a month's warning. And you pay, there's a severance package depending on how long they've worked. Well, that's not true. A lot of those things aren't true here. And often we just kind of, we committed to 5 years to somebody in Brazil or wherever, and that comes up, and we just kind of say, well, thanks for everything you've done. Well, they end up being struggling through it. Some become bitter because that's just not the way it's done. So even if you don't have legal responsibilities, I think you should have moral responsibilities and being aware of how things are done there and do it accordingly. Well, I want to encourage you, though, to not give up on the idea of still sending American missionaries. There's a reason, there's a lot of benefits to that as well, still, and that hopefully there will come a time that we will need less, but I don't think that's it yet, as I understand mission work in general. But especially those, there are a lot that will go on a weekend mission trip. There's a few that will go and give a few years of their life. There's even a smaller yet very special number of people that will go and that will be their life. And I think those people that are willing to do that, we should really be behind them. There's missionaries who want to be on the field for the rest of their lives but are forced to come home, and that really doesn't turn out to be their home anymore because they've been gone so long. But they're forced to come back, not because they want to come back, but because they don't have support. And I think that's a shame. We need those families there, and there's all kinds of benefits of them still being there. As they're there so long, they just become, like people today. There's names we could say today of people that we look up to. When we have challenges in our church or conflict, or we just want to talk to somebody wise, we know certain people that we look up to, and we go talk to those people. Well, that's what these long-term missionaries end up becoming. They become a reference point. People go to them. They just help stabilize and motivate and bring a maturity to the work in general on the mission field. So I really hope you're mindful of those people and that you understand the importance of that, and you can continue to help them as well. Well, let me talk a little bit about committees and representatives and elders and deacons and missions committees and all kinds of other things that come into play on the mission field. I think we need to understand that this is a serious responsibility, and I think most do. But it goes... Being on the as you're a missionary on the field, those people are really kind of the go-between from you and the church. You almost rest upon their hands if you're going to be on the field long, if how things are going, your family. I mean, it can be such a blessing to know that there are people there doing it well, stateside, in your representing you, but it can also be a continued source of anxiety when we're not sure how that's being done. And let me say this, and hopefully it won't come across too negative, but one weekend trip to Honduras does not make one an expert or even qualified missions deacon. That doesn't disqualify them, of course, but just because somebody's gone on a couple trips or so, that does not make them an expert. Maybe it makes them the person that has the most experience at your congregation. But I hope that as a person accepts this responsibility as a missions committee or the missions representative or the missions elder or whichever way you want to entitle that they understand that this is something serious and they take this to keep learning about it, to be involved, to talk to other missionaries, to talk to people that have come back. I mean, they're just constantly looking to grow and understand the situation better. And unfortunately, I know of some stories and some situations where, here's a missionary that's been on the field for 20 years, and here's a missions deacon that has just recently been appointed and has had a handful of trips to Mexico, and he thinks he knows best. Well, it just makes for all kinds of challenges. So that's something that needs to be taken well. And just because someone is a successful businessman stateside does not mean he knows what he's talking about when it comes to missions. One thing does not mean the other. You can be a brilliant, successful, well-organized, disciplined, best at your area here. That does not mean you know what you're talking about in missions. It doesn't mean that you don't, but you can't just assume that you know what's best for whatever country or region or situation. I guess it's more about the attitude behind that. You could use all those talents to actually become well acquainted with the work and put all those qualities that God's given you to good use. But sometimes we lean on people's statesides because they are successful, but we lean on their opinion and their evaluation a lot more than we should in comparison to those that actually know that particular situation or that particular work or that particular place. So I just want to encourage you that one thing does not necessarily mean the other. And the mindset, and I don't think this is as prevalent as some of the stories go, but the mindset that says it's not personal, it's business, is very devastating. To the missionary, it's always personal. It's always personal. We're talking about the person's life. We're talking about their family. We're talking about their kids. We're talking about things they're extremely passionate about. They have great love for the work and the church, and it's personal. You can't. It's not just like letting go somebody that works at a fast food place. It is personal, and there's all kinds of other things involved. So I just hope that you're not of that mindset. And someone must truly represent and fight for the missionary stateside. There are people that do a decent job. There are those that do a sorry job. But there are some that really excel because they really fight for the missionary. They fight for the work. They believe in it. And they're going to represent that family. They're going to represent those people. Jim's done a great job for us. I know of another guy that's a great family friend. But missionaries love him, but often those in the committee with him just don't really like him because he's not going to let things go. he's going to really fight for them. It's almost like he's fighting for his own kid. And so I hope that if you're not passionate like that about the work or the missionary, maybe there's reasons for it. Maybe the missionary doesn't really inspire passion in you, and maybe you need to find someone else. But if you pick somebody and you guys go to bat for somebody that does a good job and you believe in the work, just fight for those people. It really makes the work go a lot further. And encourage your missions committee members to always keep learning. It's just, there's so much to know. There's so many different changes that happen in different countries and different places. And there's economical changes, and there's exchange rates, and there's culture shock and reverse culture shock. All kinds of other things that we'll talk about here in a little bit. But just keep growing. There's one of the blessings of the United States is there's so many resources. There's books, and there's retreats and seminars and all kinds of people that have come back from mission work. And so just keep growing, okay? I think it's very, very important. Any thoughts so far? Or? Okay, all right. Well, as you get started, the beginning part, I guess the first steps towards mission, maybe as we're talking about selecting people, sending people, just a few thoughts along those lines here. I think being on the mission field, and things are a little different, at least in Brazil, and I'll especially speak of that, but here, because there's so many congregations and so much work and so many resources, so many qualified people, churches kind of just almost go about doing things on their own, and occasionally we do some great things like this where we come together, and that's all good. But in Brazil, for example, there aren't that many congregations and that many resources and that many qualified people. So it's almost like the church is a lot more interconnected or dependent upon one helping another. And that being the case, when you have missionaries that come and maybe they're not very qualified, or they just kind of come and they got an agenda and some other things, it has an impact on the rest of the work in Brazil, not just where they're at. Does that make sense? And so I truly think that missionaries you just need to send the best that you have. You need to send people you really trust, you really believe in, they're very qualified. And if you do that, and then I think you need to go to bat for those people. You need to be behind them. You need to be for them, encourage them, and not just kind of, I put up with them, but in the sense of, yeah, we support a couple mission works, and what does that mean? We send a check, and occasionally we read a newsletter. Well, that's okay, but I think we can do so much more. If we truly send people we're excited about and we believe in, I think we need to be more involved with them than just that. And then really go to bat for that work in them. Share your expectations. Otherwise, most will just overwork. A very few will just underwork, but most will overwork. I think it's kind of part of the missionary personality, just people that are kind of go-getters. And if you don't send some expectations, maybe some boundaries, don't micromanage everything from a distance, but share some things with them. And I think that will be to the benefit of both the sending congregation and the missionary going. And I think this is important to know, and this is not an absolute, but I think this is true most of the times. As you consider supporting a missionary, you must know that in most places, 5 years will not have a vibrant church, self-supporting, self-sustaining with elders and deacons. So if you're committing to 5 years and you're okay with that, then that's fine. But just know that that's most likely it's going to take a lot longer. The work we were a part of in Brazil, in Curitiba, we joined an existing work. They've been there since '86, and we're finally, I guess I still say we, but though I'm not there anymore, but they're going to have elders and deacons at the end of this next month. It took that long. So 5 years, there's a lot of good things that can happen, but what I'm saying is if you must know that it's going to take longer. And so if you can commit to longer, that's a lot better as you plan for this. Well, as they're on the field, what are some ideas here? Just some thoughts. Keep the missionaries and the work constantly in front of the congregation through the preacher, elders, missions committee. And I think it's important to know that this is your responsibility. The missionary can't do this from, 2,000 miles away. He can there's things he can do, send some, send some reports and some pictures and videos and the internet. You can do some other fancier things today. But somebody there at the church has to be always pushing it, always reminding folks, always telling people about it, always making sure they read the reports and the newsletters and they see the pictures. Somebody's got to take that as a responsibility. Okay? I think that's very important. It makes a world of difference. I know of some missionaries that they would come back on furlough and most of the congregation don't even know who they are. They're like, "Oh, good to see you. Are you visiting with us?" "Yes, I'm your missionary." "Oh, that's great." I mean, somebody goofed up somewhere. And so please understand that's very important and necessary. Encourage the missionaries through constant contact, care packages. You can do this all kinds of ways. I think the constant contact is even more important. Not like, "So what you do this week?" "Well, tell me your hours," or how many, not that type of contact. There's some room for that, but just people calling, like I said today with the internet, and you can call, there's ways to call for free, all kinds of other things. You can Skype and a bunch of other things, but just contact. How you doing? How are things going? I heard how you guys were struggling with this or that. How are you? How are the kids? Just because sometimes, you don't hear from anybody and you don't want to just always keep calling people to just chat. So it's just important if you can remember that. Visit the work. We could talk just this whole class about the importance of that. Somebody needs to go visit, especially people of influence in your congregation. Why? Because then they're really going to talk about it. The preacher, the elders, a missions committee, people that are going to go and they're going to see, they're going to hear, they're going to meet people, they're going to see the work. They come back, they're excited about it. They have a place they can talk. The preacher can talk from the pulpit and so forth. The elders know of what's going on because they've seen it. We had Jim from Missions Committee and Charles, one of the elders, came and visit. Not only that, the local congregation and the mission field, when they see, here are people that have been helping us to be here, and they get to see that and thank them and just put some faces there too. So it's extremely important. Plan this, budget it, whatever you need to do. At least go do it. Visit as often as you can. Training is essential, and then I mean this from a different standpoint. If your missionary is not doing in-depth training of the local members, they need to be. Most will leave one day, and some leave, and then people are not trained. And this isn't because missionaries don't know this. It's because sometimes, because of time and a bunch of other demands, you just kind of do it as best you can. There's so many, building a church and reaching here and doing this and seminar that. And so if they're not doing it, encourage them to. One of the things, for example, in Brazil, my parents have done mission work through a bunch of years, but what they do mostly now is just this. They go to different congregations in Brazil, and it's like a preacher training school on the go. So in Brazil, for example, if you're supporting a missionary there, and your missionary, for whatever reason, doesn't have a whole lot of time for this, you could just have my dad come, and he would come once a year, twice a year, 10 times a year. I mean, he goes as long as people invite him, and he'll come and focus on different books and of the Bible. But there's many ways to do this, but it must be done. Okay? Otherwise, a lot of the work will almost be in vain. And this is important. Remember that the ways of America are not always the ways of the world. That's kind of how England used to say it back in the day there. But it's not true, especially today. There's a lot of things that United States still sets the tone. But it's not that you do this because you're evil. You just do this because you're here in America. You see things the way you see things in America. It makes perfect sense. But you have to know that that's not how things are done or understood or even perceived in other countries. And so just be aware of that. Furloughs. Furloughs are important for many reasons. Furloughs really help out. It just kind of gives you a break. You get to see family and different things. So encourage your missionaries to come on furlough. Maybe, I think every other year is probably good enough. Some do it different ways. But be understanding of and forgiving of what your missionary says on furloughs, because especially the longer they're on the field, the less they're aware of what's a hot issue here. They might quote somebody, a book, and you're like, oh, well, they just read the quote somewhere. They're not, for that book or for that person, or maybe they don't even know what that person has done recently that's made a mess of things. They might come and use certain words that carry a lot of weight in this particular setting, where they don't mean any of that at all. And so just kind of, you understand what I'm saying? Just be a little forgiving of them, because they might say some things that they just don't know it means so much more here. Encourage the congregation to get to know them when they're here. Set up lunches and breakfast and dinners and, a bunch of other things along those lines. When they have little kids, maybe just kind of tone it down a tad, but when if it's just a couple or a single guy or whatever, man, have breakfast, lunch, and dinner with people. Just
keep the food coming.
Yeah, keep the food coming. The more they know, the congregation knows those people, the better. It just makes for better relationships. Allow them some R&R time. Furloughs are not vacations. It's not. You get more tired on a furlough. You need a vacation after your furlough. So encourage them as they come on furlough to have maybe, some rest at the end or something other. And also to allow them to spend some time with their family, their extended family. That's really one of the benefits of a furlough. So be mindful of that and encourage them as well. And be financially proactive. I don't want to tell you all how to do it, but the more financially proactive you can be, the better. Furloughs cost money. And sometimes the missionaries kind of struggle a little through that. So the more you can be proactive, if you can rent a car, if you can provide a car, if you can help them, where they stay, there's different ways to do it. Budget it maybe to pay for their ticket and so forth, but just be proactive in that. As they're returning stateside, there are some things. There's a lot of things we could say here, but just a few. The question, aren't you glad you're home? Don't ask that question, because maybe they're not. Maybe they don't even think of it as home anymore. Especially if they've been there a long time. They'll be forced to lie to you. Yeah, it's great to be here. But they probably mean it just stirs up. And it really, I know it's a kind question, but it really comes across as just somebody that doesn't understand what's going on. Okay? There's all kinds of issues that go on once you return, and that is just not a good question. Know that the missionary will always have a special place in their hearts for the mission field. So that's really why they're constantly going to want to talk about it. Oh, in Brazil we did it this way. Oh, the Brazilians this. Oh, I love the food. Oh, the way they do it. And they play soccer. Oh, it's just funny how... And you're just like, I don't want to hear it anymore. Well, that's... Just kind of bear with it, okay? Actually encourage it. Really, how'd they do it there? Wow, tell me about the food. Most people kind of say, you come back from the mission field, they have you over for dinner, and they say, tell us about Brazil. Well, you start, and about, 3 sentences into it, they're like, oh, yeah, that reminds me, when I went to Honduras, this happened. And you're just like, oh, that's great. And you spend the rest of the time talking about Honduras. Well, the missionaries will probably be kind enough to just kind of go with it, but allow them to talk about it. If you've been in the mission field 5, 7, 10, 20 years, surely you got a lot to say about that. And if they just have you something, say 2, 3 sentences, maybe give them a platform to do it. Encourage them to talk to the different classes that you have on a Sunday morning, to just say a few things about the work and so forth. It's just, you just kind of fall in love with wherever you're at and the people there. So it's encourage them to that. Financial considerations. I know of a family that said that it took them 11 years after they returned to recover. Okay. Yes, there's probably a lot of things that can be said there about the missionary planning, some things, and we'll say more about that later. But I think the congregation needs to be aware and be proactive in that to whatever degree they can. Help them come back. Maybe they want if they don't bring stuff back, that means they get here with 0 things. So they got to start from scratch. And as you know, that takes money. And so just help them either way, both ways, or some ways. There's just a lot of things there that you can do. There is such a phenomenon as reverse culture shock. Many people didn't know this for a long time, so we can thank some of those folks that came back and actually suffered a lot so we could learn this. But there's such a thing called reverse culture shock. You've been in a country so long, it actually becomes part of who you are, and you come back home, and there's all kinds of challenges. Okay, and so a lot could be said there, but there is such a thing. It's serious. It can be destructive, devastating, especially for kids. Kids, it's what they're called TCKs, or third culture kids. Their parents are Americans. They grew up in another place, and now they're kind of really an in-between. They're a mixture of two. So they almost feel at home nowhere, in a sense. So there's a lot of things that can happen there. It can be done, and it can be a positive thing, but if taken care of it well. There's all kinds of resources. I put it on your sheet there. Some people to talk to, Ken Harmon and Nancy. They do a good job. There's a camp. There's different things that they do at Oklahoma Christian. And this is serious. This really can mess up kids for a long time. So just take the experience of those that are offering it. And there's a few books you can read along those lines too. But all this to say what? Have your congregation, prepare them if your missionary is returning. Have some people come in, explain things, suggest reading. I would do this for the entire congregation. Some are going to, care to be prepared more than others. But if they at least know of it, as they'll know how to treat a little bit the situation different. They'll understand the kids and some other challenges. So just prepare, okay? And I think there's really no excuse not to be prepared. Like I said today, there's countless resources out there. It's just a matter of us wanting to go and listen and seek it out. Here's some financial considerations, and I just put this as one category. U.S. economy is not the same as the world economy. When you guys talk about we're in a recession, and I don't mean to be light about this. I know there's people who have lost jobs. It's a serious thing considering how things were and how things are. But I grew up in a country that there was times where the inflation was 40% a month, 1,000% a year. Just in my lifetime, they changed the currency name 4 different times because there's just so many zeros. You're going to go buy a bottle of water and you had to almost give this stack of money. So they cut a bunch of zeros, have to reprint money. All that to say that it's different out there. So you must be aware of some of that. You don't have to be an expert in some kind of foreign currency and so forth, but there's a lot of things there that exchange rates. Think about this. Your missionary can be getting paid, let's say, like, because of the exchange rate, it's almost like they're getting paid $3,000. 6 months later, they're getting paid $1,000. Yet the cost of living has gone up 30%. Well, they're still getting paid the same dollar amount, but the exchange rate has really messed things up. So just got to be aware of that. You don't have to be an expert. You can talk to people who have come and gone to whatever country, and we could tell you a little bit more about that. Be financially proactive. Don't make the missionary beg. We really don't like to ask for money. I mean, I know we shouldn't. Some can kind of overcome this, but most of us feel guilty anytime we have to talk about it. I don't like talking about money. And the church here has been always kind. They've always given us raises. We never had to ask. And so just be proactive. Just be mindful. You know your situation. Just kind of keep an eye out for that. No one, when they come back, here's the situation I told you of a family. It took 11 years to work things out. Most of them will come back. They'll sell most of those things in Brazil or wherever. They'll sell it. Almost give things away. They're just trying to get rid of things. Most of them will come back with nothing. So most will rent for whatever years they were there, so they really come back with nothing. There's something to be said for buying property, but you just got to be a little mindful of that and just really do your homework to see if it's the right time, the right exchange rate. It can be done well. We've done it. But it needs to be done well. But most folks won't. They'll just come back with nothing. Truly nothing. Well, you got to start from. It's just a long way to go when you're starting from scratch, and you maybe have kids that you didn't have before. So just be thoughtful of that. Stay informed. Once again, talk to missionaries and others. Here's just a few suggestions of people to contact. I've even made a few more suggestions about the financial considerations on your sheet. I talked about an emergency fund that the congregation can set aside to kind of help with different things that maybe the missionaries need to hurry back home for whatever reason. Somebody died, civil unrest, all kinds of things. If you set that aside, it makes it easier. I've made several suggestions for the missionaries too. I think that missionaries need to be extremely responsible with their finances. One of the things you could encourage them to do before they go is take some classes on personal finances. There's stuff like Dave Ramsey you could read. There's things. Kent offers a class at OC on personal finances. I've offered some classes in Brazil, and I got some stuff I'm translating. There's a lot of things to do. I suggest some books. Because I think it's important that the missionary be as prepared as possible. And there's some books for that. Here's some people you can contact right here. Obviously, I put my name, my wife and I there. We're happy to help. We're from Brazil. But South America has a lot of things in common. If I can't help you, I know people in South America that can. Ken and Nancy Harmon, Ken is sitting here. He's going to have a class later. I encourage you to come back. They were in Australia. They can help you with things about reverse culture shock, finances, kids. They got a lot of experience, and they can help you. Clyde Antoine has also been a visiting missionary at OC for a long time, or a missionary in residence. He was in Germany. He could help you with that part of it. Ben Langford, I went to school with Ben. He was a missionary in Africa for a few years. He's back now. OC is trying to be more proactive in missions. in the resource part of it, and they are starting a thing called the Center for Global Missions, and Ben is heading this out. So, there's just another resource. And actually, if I could have Jim, Kent, maybe can help hand these out. If you would be interested, your congregation or you individually, in attending a class or a seminar or a weekend along the lines of mission work, this is just something that OC, that Kent helps out there. I'm trying to be of help to them as well. If you think you would be interested in maybe getting a newsletter, just anything along those lines, put your name down and a contact information, and as we work those out, we'll let you know, because we want to be more helpful. Any questions or thoughts or comments? I think we're down to the minute here. I really appreciate it, guys. It's just inspiring to see you sitting here. We want to do this well. We're very passionate about missions. We love the church for all the things that you guys have done, and so let's keep doing our best for this. Appreciate you coming, and like I said, I'm here if you need to talk about anything, or Kent would be happy to do it as well.
I'd like to introduce Steve Cates. He did 9 years in Indonesia. He did back and forth. 17 altogether. And of course, Mr. Hartman there. Is there somebody else here from the mission field? We appreciate all of your efforts.